Hey, I'm Nick Filardi. I co-host with Jason Thielbar on the world's second finest podcast. Every week we talk about 90s Bat books, but we also talk comics, movies, books, TV, both new and old, that we love. What you're about to listen to is an unedited version of that conversation. This is the To Read Pile. Jason, what'd you read this week?
Nicholas. I was actually just kind of like half reading it because speaking of favorite books, and we have talked about this a lot before, actually, just in the course of us being good friends. Um, but one of my favorite books of like probably the past God, I want to say like almost 15 years. Like this always ranks really high, and I'm it does make me kind of sad though. Is Nowhere Men,
Oh
Volume
man,
One.
yeah. Was did
Because
I tell you to pick that up? Was that a
no,
recommendation?
no. It was, the cover really grabbed me when I saw it at Sarge's, and
Yeah.
it it but I think I read it twice in a row when I first got it, and then I remember that I think I, like, texted you or something like that. I'm like, "Yo, you ever fuck with Nowhere Man?" And you were just like, "Oh, shit, dude, yeah, no, Nowhere Man's great," and, like, you
Because
kinda
I've
know the
I've
guys who did it, and, like, you're like, "Oh, they're really" all this, like, stuff, and I'm like, "Oh, it's so good," and the I don't know how but, like, it the only depressing part about it is that there's only 1 volume,
I
you
know,
know?
man. It's like
And
primed to be like a long running thing. So give us a quick synopsis on like what Nowhere Man is, because it's been a long time since I've read it.
alright, so Nowhere Men, I mean, and the description on the back of the trade, like, does a great job, but it's just science is the new rock and roll, so it's essentially, about these, scientists who become like the Beatles, but with
Yeah,
science, and they revolutionize the world, and it gets into, the ethics of the kind of manipulation of it, and, like, the power of celebrity and just powerful people, and, like, the kinda the choices you make and should or shouldn't make, and
sure.
it's just it's funny, and the art is mind-blowingly good. I look at this art, and I remember too when I first bought it, I look at this art and I start flipping through it, and I try not to, like, in my own art and drawing, I try to just like a- as much as I can just sort of like find myself, like I know
Yeah.
I have my
Yeah.
influences, and I know my influences will come out no matter what. But like I look at this art and I'm like, this is exactly how I want to draw. I'm like, this is exactly
I
how
feel the
I
same
wish
way.
I could will myself. I wish I could just will myself to draw like this, because it's just so good. It's that perfect mixture of um sort of like realistic anatomy and drafting and everything, and then also just cartooning, like
Yeah.
actual cartooning, and the
Shout out
whole
the
book.
artist. Who drew it?
Oh, Nate Belgrade.
Yeah,
Nate
dude.
Belgrade
He's
is
so good.
and the whole book too, like, I think and I've mentioned this to you before when we've talked about, Nowhere Men, is that, like, everybody on it is just phenomenal, and holy in the chapter breaks, there are, like, full magazine spreads about these characters, so, like, not only
Yeah.
does it, like, immerse you more in the world, I'm also thinking, like, that is so much more work. You
Yeah,
this
yeah.
not
They put a
only
lot of love into that trade.
Yeah, like, you not only, like, were doing a comic book full color that is fucking a Herculean task on its own, but you decided to do essentially the equivalent of, like, a full magazine issue, like,
Yeah.
replete with fake ads and everything, and I'm like and it does really, like, help ground you into the whole sort of, like, crazy celebrity, like, nature, like, of these
Yeah.
characters, and it
It's also
makes you
it's
feel
also
like
still
you're
like a straight up superhero book, right? Like you've talked about the nature of celebrity and stuff like that, but like
Oh,
these
yeah.
characters have like they're basically like the Fantastic Four in a kind of a different direction in a different context kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it is, and it's just so God, yeah, and, obviously, I'm like I said, it's just one of my favorite, books of, like, in a long, long time, because
Yeah.
it's also because it's again, it's fun, it's a well done story, the art blows my friggin' mind, and
Yeah.
all the like you said, a labor of love and all the work that they do to really pull you into, like, you're just trapped in the world without knowing that you're trapped,
Yeah.
and then the only depressing part is that there's only
There's
one
only
volume,
one. Yeah.
but it
But
is
still
worth
worth
it.
picking up and checking out.
Oh oh, yeah,
I
completely.
When that book came out, there was a period of time where I was just like, everybody I met who was like, "What comics should I read? What should I get into?" I'm like, "Here, just check this out. Like, this'll hook you." And they'll be like, "Is there more?" And I'm like, "No."
No,
I'm
but
sorry there is no more, but it's a very fun read and you'll have a good
yeah.
time with it.
And I just wanna say one more thing though, is that, like, is that I just want, like, I was thinking when I was, like, picking this out for the to read pile, I was like, "Man, I just wanna be like, who's a rich comic book person?" I just wanna be like, "You know what, Jim Lee? You got enough money. Like, figure it out. Just write him a check." You
Yeah,
know? Just just some rich comic book person. Get like, whatever it takes, 'cause I don't, eh,
yeah,
I mean, I understand it's not that simple and all of that.
sure,
I just
sure. I was about to interject with a bunch of stuff of like, well, actually, but like it's fine. It's fine.
yeah, yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
I
no.
know that Nate really like kind of emotionally beat himself up just to cross the finish line of like that first trade.
Oh,
Um
yeah.
and he was wrestling with a lot. I think he wrote like an open letter out to the fan base when he was like online a lot more, but he hasn't been online in a long time. This is like a mid
Uh,
2000s book, right? Like late
I th
2000s?
yeah, I think, early let's check the 2015,
Oh, okay. A little newer
is
than I
the
thought.
yeah, yeah, but still, but yeah, I mean, hell, I can, yeah, and as saying of like how amazing the art is, it's like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, but like you don't like you don't get there without trying real hard. It's not like he just
Yeah.
dashed off these pages or anything. Like,
Yeah. I Comics take an emotional toll as well. And I think that there's a lot of people who um and I'm not saying Nate is one of these people, but just in general, when I was starting to come up in comics, I was like, I'd see a lot of people come in, make a big splash, and then just disappear. Uh, the artist for Spy Boy for Cliffhanger
yeah,
comes to mind, where it's like
yeah,
comes in, makes a big splash, everyone loves it, and then they just leave because it's like comics are hard to fucking make, and like unless you want to keep going, it's like somebody said to me once that the only people who keep making comics are people with something wrong with them. And I feel like that's a there's a grain of truth in there because
well,
shit's
yeah.
hard, man. Shit's hard.
Yeah. Well, like I remember watching that show Hot Ones with the actor David Harbour, kind of
Yeah.
a little call back to Stranger Things. And at the end of it, they asked him about any advice he would give to young actors. And he was like, well, when I was first starting out, someone told me, an acting teacher told me, don't do it unless you have to, you know, like, don't do it unless you have to. And he's like, I used to think that was bullshit, but he's like, for as hard as I've had to work and for as long as it took to him to get to a place where he was,
Sure.
even before Stranger Things, he was
Yeah.
successful, but, he was like, "Yeah, I kinda believe that." He's like, "Don't do it unless you have to." He's like, "I have to do this." He's like, "I'd be doing this
Right.
if I
Right.
wasn't making any."
The people who are lifers in comics, like, are lifers because that's who they are. It's built they
Yeah,
they can do other things, but they don't want to do other things. Like, it is in their DNA to make comic
yeah.
books, you know?
Yeah, and unless you're, in the, situation of, like, I'm thinking of, Saga and how, like, work intensive, that art
Sure.
must be, but also, like, when that book first came out, like, Brian K. Vaughan was already very well established, and because he's Brian K.
Sure.
Vaughan, he can be like, "Yeah, here's how it's gonna happen. It's gonna come out every other month, and then, at this time, we're gonna take 4 months off."
New
So
issue of Saga coming out, by the way. I don't know if you know that, if
oh,
you're reading, if you're current.
I think I'm a volume behind, as of
Uh,
yet, but yeah, but I
it was
don't think
supposed
that,
to
like,
it was supposed to come out this week, and I heard that Diamond screwed up the shipment in some capacity. So some comic shops got it and some didn't. So it's technically got postponed a week, the
oh,
release.
that's yeah, what a great thing, Diamond, for one of the more popular books
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
shelves. but yeah, but like unless you're like, unless you already have that pull when you start, like if hypothetically, if Brian K. Vaughan was writing this, like he probably could have been like, hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Take some time. We'll be all right.
Yeah,
I'll
I think if it was a
you know,
bigger name, if there was more people reading it, they might have like
yeah, that too.
wrote
Yeah.
they would have gotten another artist on it maybe. But who wrote that? Was that Eric Stevenson or was that
Yeah.
yeah. I
It
mean,
was Eric Stevenson. Yeah.
maybe they would have got another artist. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah, but yeah, yeah.
some
What
things too are like, you know, when it's like this team made this book, like if we're going to put together another team, we're just going to make another book kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it's hard to replicate the flash in the pan, especially with a book as successful as that. Like that one first trade is just so nice and it's so good. It's such like a finished, completed idea that to like just call in another artist seems kind of weird.
Yeah, sometimes yeah, it's like a band that has like a really iconic drummer. It's like, sure, you can
Right.
get someone else to come in there, but like, is it really the
Is it
same?
really the
Eh,
same band?
yeah.
Is it?
Is it
You know? Yeah.
yeah, it's like, yeah, like, you
Uh
know, what you
so
what you reading?
I had a week of manga, man. Like I came to this to read pile and I was like, I don't think I actually read anything. And then I was like, oh wait, I read like 8 volumes of Chainsaw Man.
But what you
Which
already recommended, so
yeah, but I already recommended it, so it's like, do we talk about Chainsaw Man? But I also read the second volume of Dan to Dan. Have we talked about that before?
I think you personally mentioned it to me, but I don't,
It's about these two kids, it's a manga, Shonen Jump. It's about these two kids who are in high school. One's a big nerd, and one's kind of like he's one's a dude. He's a big nerd, and he's real into ghosts and supernatural things. And then the other one is like a kind of popular girl who's into aliens. And they get in an argument, and they're like, "Look, aliens don't exist. Ghosts exist." And she's like, "Look, you're wrong. Aliens exist." Or maybe it's flip flopped. Is it flip flopped? Because the girl wears alien earrings. I don't know. Anyway, it might be flip flopped. So anyway, oh, the girl thinks the spirit world exists. The guy thinks the alien exists. I don't want to flip flop it because we're about to flip flop it again. I'm explaining this incredibly poorly. Hold on. So they challenge each other to be like, okay, you go you go to this haunted place. If you don't think ghosts exist, go to this haunted place. And then the guy's like, fine, you got to go to this like alien abduction spot. And she's like, fine. So she gets abducted by aliens. He gets haunted by ghosts because both things happen. The or the alien abduction awakens the girl's like spiritual abilities. So she has kind of like this like mage hand. If you ever played D&D, mage hand is like when you can create like a ghost hand that can grip things that can also touch the spirit world. And so that wakes up within her in her alien abduction, helps her fight off the aliens. And then the guy gets possessed by Turbo Granny, who is a 100 km/h granny who like hangs out in this tunnel where these like girls were murdered. So from there, they kind of like are kind of like glued together in that he needs her help to kind of fix this Turbo Granny stuff. And then I assume the alien stuff will escalate. Also, the whole book is horny, Jason. The whole book is real horned up. When Turbo Granny takes over this kid, he's like, she took my dick. It's gone. What the hell? And, and
oh
so
man.
they got to get it back. And then like she introduces him to her grandmother who looks like she's 25. And she's like a spiritual person. She's like, we're gonna get that dick back. And then she's like, let me see that dick. And he's like, don't look at my dick, like
This
it's
is this is turning into the first conversation in Reservoir Dogs when they're talking about like aversion.
it's Jason. It's so fucking good. The guy who drew it was an assistant on Chainsaw Man and started doing this, spun it off. And
Nice.
I actually enjoy this book a little more than Chainsaw Man, but there's only 2 volumes out, so it's like still pretty heckin' new if you want to jump into it. The second
Yeah.
volume like literally just came out. Uh I love it. It's absolutely up my alley with like cryptids and aliens and stuff like that. I get into all that kind of like
Yeah.
supernatural stuff. So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh
That
it
sounds
has it
great.
also has like a Japanese spin of like yokai and stuff like that. The art is fantastic. I think the art is smidge better than Chainsaw Man. Um
Ooh,
yeah, really really great.
ooh.
I can give
It
you a Chainsaw Man update if you want.
Yeah, give that to me. I do wanna mention though how this does sort of like, how you were like that you're like, "Oh, and it's incredibly horny. Oh, and this guy lost his dick, and now they're on a journey to get." One of the first mangas I ever read, like, when I got into, when I realized that, like, "Oh, this is a thing from Japan that was, like, translated," was,
Yeah.
um, I've never known how to properly pronounce this, but it's, Ramna One Half, and,
Oh, yeah, that's
I
when, he turns into a girl, but if he gets wet, he turns back into a boy or something, and no one
yeah.
knows that Ramna's like these are everyone thinks these are 2 separate people, like,
Oh,
that's
oh,
the
yeah,
joke, right?
yeah,
Right? Yeah.
and it gets so nuts and so much more crazy, and I've actually for a while, I've been wanting to, at least digitally, like, just, read them all, so I might hop on that because I think that's a
There's a
Viz
lot of
thing now.
there's a
I think
lot of,
Viz
like,
has
Shonen
it.
Jump stuff that I wanna read that's kinda like this where it's like, I would love to read this. It is
Yeah,
long.
and but so I just it's so funny, like, I had the first, like, 3 or 4 volumes. There were these nice, like, rectangle books with, like, that really good paperback, spine, so,
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
And I reread those, like, so many times because the art was beautiful and the jokes were just
Yeah, solid,
perfect.
solid.
Yeah,
Even
just
translated from Japanese, jokes still work.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because they're just they're having fun with this, like, just ridiculous
yeah.
plot. Just this silly plot, and they're just like, "Yeah, we're gonna get crazier with it. Why
Man,
not?"
spoilers for the 2nd volume of DanDaDan. So he gets his dick back, but his balls are still missing, and and the spirits take them, and when they did that, they put his testicles into, like, this, like, golden ball, so it just looks like a gold ball. And
Mhm.
then this popular girl finds it, picks it up, and is like, "I'm the hero of the story because 'cause I'm popular and pretty." And, like, she's, like, telling herself that the entire time. And she's like, "This golden ball is part of my spiritual gift." And they're like, "That is his testicle, please give it back," you know?
That sounds
Jason, it's
fan
buck wild. You'll love it.
that's
You'll love
oh
it.
god. Yeah, that sounds so good. I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to look at I bet, Viz has, like, a digital
There's a
comic
Shonen Jump app.
subscription
Yeah, there's
thing.
an app out there that you can just, like,
Yeah.
jump in, and I think you actually
Yeah,
will get
I should jump in.
more of the story because I think more of it is available on the app first before it hits print in English,
Yeah,
so
I
you
think
can read way ahead if you want.
yeah. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to do that because, man, like, I think I've also been itching for, as we talk about, like, Batman adventures, like, I love zany shit sometimes, like, it's just
Yeah,
so
yeah,
much
yeah.
fun, and it's such a great, like. And I love it when especially people in comic books, and I think I talked about Grant Morrison talking about this before, that their idea, if they would have continued on New X-Men, was to just sorta up the ante to, like, try to dare, movie people to make this into a movie. Like, don't get as it'd be like, "Oh, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
special effects are good enough now that you can, make Wolverine convincing? Well, guess what? Now I'm gonna do some even crazier shit."
Yeah,
And I
yeah, yeah. I
this
was
kind of
actually
stuff that, like, just
I
works
was
it
actually
works so well in comics.
I was thinking about how I've been reading a lot of manga lately, and I think part of it is that and I can talk about this a little bit on the extra stuff. By the way, there's extra stuff on YouTube, an extended conversation of this. We started doing that. That comes out every Wednesday on my YouTube page, YouTube/Nick Phil. So when we talk about Chainsaw Man, I kind of talk about this a little more, but there's kind of something that I realize that I'm getting from manga that I'm not really getting from American comic books anymore, at least superhero stuff, mainstream stuff. And that is like a lot of that stuff is built either to create movies or perpetuate an IP. And like I understand everything that's going on and all the characters and powers and things. So there's not a lot of like surprises that happen. And like with
Hmm.
manga, it's like, hey, here's this completely new IP. You're not going to know what's going on in the world. You're along for the ride. Like, get on the roller coaster, idiot. And I'm like, yes, yes, I will get on the
Yeah.
roller coaster, you know?
Yeah, yeah, could be because it all like it's like that God, we're repeating our well, I'm repeating myself so much. It's like that that Bruce Timm quote when he's asked about like continuity or which is the real one or what and he's just like, "You know what? I decided a
He's
long
like, "I'm
time
just
ago
trying to
there."
make an engaging thing." Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
but all
yeah.
like he's like they're all real. He's like whatever your favorite storyline, he's like that's real too.
Sure.
Like
Um,
what like just yeah, let's just make some good let's make some fun shit, man.
yeah, and I used to American comics used to do this, like, we've talked about before about the Doug Munch universe. I don't know if we've talked about it on stream, but, like, uh the idea like he was doing like Electric Warrior and like Lords of the Ultra Realm, and he was doing all these like little things that were in the DC universe where he was just like, I'm just gonna make a character, and it's gonna be fucking wild. And it's like you don't really see that anymore. It's like
Yeah.
all kind of like tightly run by a smart editorial staff to feed into each other and interweave, which is part of the appeal. But then sometimes I just want to get on the roller coaster, man.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like the last bastion of that in I think at least in popular in mainstream, comic books or like the big two really were was Vertigo for the time that Vertigo
Oh
had
yeah,
its
yeah, yeah.
time in the sun. It was just like, oh yeah, the crazy shit's going to be over here. We're gonna we're
Right.
gonna we're gonna let them get nuts with it and
And also make their own IPs and like, whatever, Like
yeah.
you could argue DC Black Label lets people get nuts with it, but it also keeps it within the set of IPs. They're not making like a new thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like there and there's not really too many like or at least as far as I can remember recently, I don't know if there's been any too many books that are like big swings that like the big guys are like original books that are big swings, like original
I think
characters. Because
there's
I'm thinking of Why the Last Man, and like you can
yeah.
say a lot about the execution of that. And Brian K. Vaughan was still a young writer, and like I'm still a fan of the series, of the comic book. But like I can't imagine today a writer who's not very well known having their own creator owned book with the artist that they created it with, and like having let a big publisher being like, oh, you're going to begin your story with every male mammal like dying on Earth, sure, go ahead. Like I don't know if that happens today. It's like you
I
said, like
think
people are
that
like maybe more about pushing IP and
I don't think that happens necessarily at Marvel and DC, but it is still happening in the industry. It's just happening at like, you know, places that are not necessarily like, making Batman and Spider-Man stuff. It's happening at places like IDW and stuff like that. Like, uh, you know,
yeah, yeah, like oh, like I
I
have
was
this
trying to
movie.
remember if Boom or Aftershock had folded. Which one was the one that had folded? I couldn't
Oh,
remember. But anyway,
yeah,
yeah,
it,
those like companies that are like have some IPs, maybe like IDW has like Transformers and Mutant Ninja Turtles, and like they have some IPs that they work from, Star Trek, stuff like that. But like
yeah, yeah,
they also do their own thing and kind of give creatives like a chance to create. And Image is
yeah,
founded on that. Like
yeah,
make your own book, go crazy.
yeah, yeah.
So it exists. It just doesn't exist, I think, at the big two anymore.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just and again, it's also like, just like people like I think the other thing too that's always been wild to me about American comics is that like and I'm sorry if this offends your profession, but like,
Oh no.
there's plenty of popular manga where it's not all color. Like you
Oh
don't
yeah,
have
yeah,
to
yeah.
have
Most manga
like
is in color.
yeah, like it's like guys like obviously American audiences are okay with reading a book that has no color, like,
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
like if you wanna try some things out or whatever, you can just have it be black and white at least at first and, you know,
Jason, are you trying to recreate the '80s black and white boom? Is that what's happening here? Are you trying to
I'm
kickstart it?
I'm I bet I can buy, the trademark to Comico for, like, not a lot of money,
All right,
you know?
you wanna can we talk about Chainsaw Man?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, you
Let's
wanna
talk
get
about
back into
just
Chainsaw Man, I love it.
real
You're
quick.
you're yeah, yeah.
So, I was a little embarrassed when I saw the Chainsaw Man stuff, that we posted because I was like, I talked about Power being a demon and a person, and she is neither of those things. She's a fiend, technically. Now that I'm
Ooh,
like 12 trades in, like I'm like
you're deep
steeped in the
into it.
lore. Yeah,
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 yeah, you're
yeah.
like, "Oh god, I was such a buffoon all those years ago."
Uh, I really, really loved this is what I loved about it. Every time I thought I had a grip on like how the structure was going to play out. Like, oh, Chainsaw Man, he has a battle. Then we have some downtime with characters. We get a little piece of character stuff, slice of life, whatever, with these wacky, zany characters. And then he's going to be in another battle. And there's a structure to it, verse, chorus, verse, whatever. Every time that I thought I had it, the fucking book would zag on me and like go a different complete direction where I'm like, oh, what the hell's going on? And then to the point where I was getting to like the end of it, and I was like, oh, now we're gonna get some character pieces. And I'm like, the character pieces were the battle the whole time. I was like it's just such a like great book to hook you volume after volume in different ways where they're like, now we're going to hook you for this reason and now we're going to hook you for this it never gets tired.
Oh, man.
However, there are two things that kind of drove me nuts.
Alright.
One of which I think contributes to the chaotic nature of it. So in one way it's like, oh, this is a feature, not something to be upset about. However, there were times where I felt like I was reading fucking Calvin Ball on like a grand scale
Alright.
where it was like, let me give you an example.
Alright, alright.
Chainsaw Man talking to this girl. This girl's got a choker on her neck.
Yeah,
Turns
yeah.
out she's going to try to kill him. Pulls the pin, her head explodes, and then like she's a bomb demon. She's like a grenade demon or something. And then she's like, I'm gonna blow you up. And then she starts to blow him up. But then his shark demon friend named Beam, who can swim through anything, swims out from the ground and grabs him and pulls him away. And I'm like, it feels like Calvin Ball. It's like, well, you can't explode me because my shark demon friend who can swim through anything comes and grabs me and takes me away. And it's like, there were points in the combat where I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, I
Do
it's
do
like
you
demons who are ideas of things, not even physical objects, like an eternity demon. Like it starts to like get so fucking wild, Jason.
now, maybe you've read more than I have because I haven't read any, but from what I hear, and this is another, a book, uh, manga that I really actually wanna read is, Dragon Ball, and I hear, like, Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, like, the manga, it just gets sillier and sillier and
I haven't read
crazier and
any of it.
crazier.
It's on my
Did
list. They have
Yeah.
these like 3-in-1 trades that are pretty cheap for the before you read the Dragon Ball Z stuff, which is really long. There's like
Yeah.
Dragon Ball, which is
Yeah.
shorter and more digestible for you to like kind of, check out the world if you want to get into it.
Yeah, yeah.
I really want to read that stuff. It's going to
Yeah.
be on my pile at some point. Um
Yeah.
because
But
I
how
just am totally charmed by Toriyama's art. Like
Oh,
it's
I love
so
his
good.
vehicles,
Yeah.
his character oh, yeah, no,
The great thing
it's
about his vehicles, Jason, the great thing about his vehicle, we're off on a tangent, but the great thing about
yeah,
his
yeah.
vehicles is that they are all real world cars and they are the most like obscure fucking weird cars that like you can pull from.
Oh, yeah,
I love it. I love it.
those tiny little, like, Suzuki,
Yeah.
half convertible like Jeep things. Like I
He drew this because my buddy Boix is reading him, and he keeps posting the vehicles and stuff in the Discord chat on my Discord, and he put this like one sports car from a failed brand that they expected to make 1,000 of, and they only made like 249 of them in the world, and they're like available only in Europe, extremely niche. And it's like, I think it was in like, it's notable for being the car that was in a Pretenders music video in the 80s, and that's it. Like,
That's
it's
amazing.
so weird. So you like, when I read that stuff, I'm like, oh, Toriyama's a car guy, and like he's translating it into this stuff that's like really super fun. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah,
Toriyama's just so good, man. Yeah, I
yeah.
want to read all that Dragon Ball stuff.
But how much do you think that kind of thing in Chainsaw Man is sort of like either an influence or a total homage to? Like I said, I've never read them, but like from what I hear of people who are fans of like the books and the anime, that like it just gets like crazier and
Yeah,
crazier, and
you
there's
try
like
to like one
every
up yourself and
eh,
keep the reader reading and
yeah,
things like that. Yeah,
yeah.
I think that manga has an ability to do that, that is, especially when reading stuff like long format, like the Nightfall stuff that we're reading now. Like
Mhm.
Nightfall doesn't have any of that stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's happy to just like tread water for like 10 issues, you know?
Yeah,
Uh
it never really keeps it very light.
yeah, and this stuff is not like that. So occasionally the Calvin Ball can be really fun in Chainsaw Man, and
Mhm,
occasionally I'm like, okay, but what the hell's going on? Like,
mhm.
why is this character doing this? What's happening
Yeah,
now? Like,
yeah.
I don't
Or some
understand.
or sometimes you might be like, "Ah, I know it's a comic book, but come on, come
Right.
on."
I just need like a
Like
little bit. And there's
yeah.
also my only other complaint is that there is a group of assassins, and there's three of them, and they can change their appearance to any corpse that they touch. So if they touch a corpse, they can change themselves to look like that corpse, basically that person.
A lot of corpses lying around in
There
this,
are a lot of Jason, you would be
okay,
surprised.
okay, fair enough. Well, I mean, you know what? The
But
book is called Chainsaw Man. I don't know if it should be surprised how many corpses are laying
because
about in this world.
because of how quickly manga moves, like panel to panel,
Yeah.
it gets so confusing when they're on screen, because you're like, it's very difficult. It moves so fast that you're like, is that guy one of the assassins? Is he not one of the assassins? I can't even
Yeah,
remember. There's
the
so many characters at this point too. There's like 10 people trying to like work with Chainsaw Man, and then there's like multiple gangs of assassins that are trying to kill him, and it's like you're just in the, when it comes to like people who are now able to change their form, unless it's like spelled out slowly and very carefully, it's so easy to get confused. So
yeah, I've never
it caused me to reread a lot of that arc in particular.
yeah. I've never thought about that before, but that's a really good point that, like, there is, like, a lot of, especially if it's a super action heavy, manga that because it is, like, it does go so fast, and on the one hand, that's good because that helps the action feel snappier and more like your heart rate's kinda up, but then,
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're right, I never really thought about, like and I have with certain mangas that are like that, like, sometimes, Blade of the Immortal, when I was still reading that, would be like that, where I was like, "Okay, wait a minute, now he killed 5 people and oh, wait, he didn't kill the main guy? Oh, shit, okay, I have to go
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
he
Let me
didn't kill the
let me
main."
flip back a little bit. Let me, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because when you're reading it though, yeah, because you're like you're in it, and then
Right,
I missed
right,
something. So yeah,
right.
yeah, never thought about that.
Uh, However, those gripes aside, Chainsaw Man is worth a read. It is a bonkers good time, and I've read 12 of them, and I'm ready to read more. So put it in my pull box. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, you've read 12 of them in like 2 hours.
Yeah,
You've been mainlining some Chainsaw Man
that's the
lately.
other thing. Like when the next one comes out, that's going to be the start of the new arc. Chainsaw Man is now old enough to be in high school. Uh, so I'll probably read the 12 trades again, because it's like,
Yeah,
why the fuck not? They read so
uh,
fast, you know?
yeah. Oh shit, are you all caught up now?
Yeah, I'm all caught up. There's
Oh,
only
so
there's only 12 out, so
Oh, so you're like that person who, like, hasn't watched the first 2 seasons of some really popular TV show, and then, like, now you're all caught up and you're super excited and you're like,
And I'm like,
"Shit,
next
now
one,
I'm gonna have to."
next one. Yeah, I
Yeah, yeah,
gotta
like, I'm
wait.
not gonna yeah, I gotta wait, this is bullshit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, man.
yeah,
That's great.
everyone read Chainsaw Man. It's very fun.
Yeah. I'm good but hell, like, I think Viz should give you a commission because honestly, I'm gonna sign up for whatever their, like, month to try to get some of that, man.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that there's some, Dragon Ball 3 in ones on the horizon for me. I've been kind of, like, really warm to manga lately for whatever reason. I just feel like it's pressing all the buttons in my brain.
well, there are so many, like there's so many great, comic books from other places that aren't America, and they have such a different and they treat it so differently because, well, I mean, it's a different place in America. Like, why wouldn't
Sure.
they? You know, and comic books in Japan. I remember reading somewhere that it was comic books in Japan became so very popular because post World War II, when they were being occupied by the Allied forces, like everyone was like still very poor and starving, and there were all these like heavy censorship laws and other things that were popular at the time, like TV and movies, were really expensive to produce, but paper was still cheap, and they've
Well,
had a lot,
and
you know.
American GIs were bringing comics over to Japan, and then
Yeah,
Japanese people were reading comics, and they were like, "Oh shit, this is great."
yeah, and Osamu Tezuka was very, influenced by Disney, and they're still, yeah, and popular Disney
Mhm.
comic books too at the time, in
Yep.
Walt Kelly, no, not Walt Kelly, I'm sorry, that's Pogo. Karl
Who
Barks. I'm sorry,
Okay.
the Karl Barks,
Donald Duck
like
stuff. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and that became so important to them, and it became so ingrained in their culture in such a different way than it did in America. And there are all these like comic books that are like strictly for sort of like different age groups that still persist to this
Yeah.
day in Japan. And in America, for the most part, up until fairly recently, the thing was that like, oh yeah, you read comic books when you were a kid and then you aged out of them,
There
and
was
they're
a great story that I was reading, I forgot it was a writer in connection with the DC editorial or Marvel editorial office. He was talking about how in the '80s, he wanted to they wanted to make a, charity book for the famine that was happening in Africa, and so they got in touch with a charitable organization, and they were disgusted at the idea. Like, they were like, "Nothing's funny about famine. Why would you wanna make a comic about famine?" And, like, their idea of what a comic was in the '90s for, like, a 30 to 40-year-old person, their idea of, like, what comics were strips, comic book strips, like,
mm,
that you would read in the newspaper, and they're like,
yeah.
why would we make that?" And then the reason I thought this was notable was because like 30 or 40-year-old person in the '80s thought that comic strips were just comic strips. You read them as a kid and that was it. And then now it's like we have a we've gone completely the other direction. And it's only like 40 years later and it's like everybody understands what comics are. Everybody can understand that a comic can be more than one thing. It's a medium. It's not just one thing you read in the newspaper before you throw it away. And it's that shift is like
Yeah.
it shows like how young we are in the medium and like within the scope of like what people are making. Like we're still so young as an art form.
Yeah. Well, and also and someone on Twitter, I'm sorry I forgot to write this down, but I thought I should have maybe wrote down their name. I didn't know if I was going to bring up on the podcast, but they asked like, um, or like they just like were, thinking about how American comics might have been different uh if in the beginning superheroes didn't grab hold of the medium, so hard because
Oh yeah, we
comic
just got
books.
romance books, adventure books the whole time.
Well, because like the the Agaloom Comic Book Festival just happened, and the French and other countries in Europe, like, revere comic book artists, like,
Yep.
revere them, and, like, they're taken more seriously and, like, respected, like, they're actually, like, respected, you know?
Wait, what?
Um,
Wait, where? Okay, where is this? Let me write this
Agaloon
down.
friends. Yeah, get
Okay. All right.
it.
All right.
All right, Shannon, we're learning French. Um, and I've been thinking about that because that's a really interesting thought, and I think that, like, that has, like, sorta hampered the view of Americans of that they have, of comic books because for a long time, and again, up until it I mean, and it is, to be fair too, it is a young medium, but,
I think
it
there was
was
an initial stumble in American audiences and what
yeah,
they thought comics were, that, like,
yeah,
Japan and Europe kind of, like, came up to speed on what the
yeah.
possibilities were here very a
Well
lot quicker.
yeah, well, I think it was the code. I think it was the comics code that killed it because
Oh, yeah, probably. Now that I'm thinking about it, you're probably right.
Because there was a lot of the EC stories and, like, the editors and writers and artists for the EC stories who were like, "Yeah, I know, like,
Yeah.
teenagers are reading this, but, like, I'm not," they're like, "I'm not fucking writing Tales from the Crypt for a six-year-old to read. Are you crazy?
Right.
That's d you know, it's like Alfred Hitchcock wasn't making The Birds for an eight-year-old to watch. Like, come on, guys. Like, this
Right,
should be
right.
blatantly obvious, but, um, I think that was the kind of fork in the road because I think
Sure.
they you know, people would have, accepted, I think, maybe stuff like Will Eisner's, like, A Contract with God. I know that was a bit later than, after the whole code
Sure.
bullshit happened, but, like, I think those kind of, like, early stories where he was trying to do more of just a straight up, like, narrative kind of, a slice of life story that was more common at the time in Europe. I think that might have been even more widely popular, like, at least,
Yeah.
like, newsstand and bookstore wise, if not for just the complete, like, because that's what was stuck in people's minds from the whole seduction of the innocent bullshit was like, "Oh, these are all comic books, youth, delinquency, youth, comic books, youth, that's all they are, that's all
Yeah.
they'll ever be."
Yeah.
And it was just yeah, it was just
Man,
saddled with that.
really did a number on the culture.
Yeah, censorship does that,
Yeah.
you know? Fucking Frederick Wortham, piece of shit.
Anyway, enemy of the pod for sure.
Oh,
Enemy of
yeah,
the
yeah,
pod.
yeah. Rotten hell, Comics Code Authority, rotten hell.
Jason, where can people find you? Oh, wait,
Mm,
before we
yeah.
do that, I keep forgetting to be like, "Hey, share the podcast if you like it." Please,
Yeah.
please do that. Do I have to tell people to do that? I don't know that I need to tell people to do that, but
Ho how about this? I'll put a little spin on it. If you don't like the podcast, uh, share it still and make fun of us because, that'll be some good press.
no.
Yeah?
No, I don't want to harbor this negative resentment. Share if you hate the podcast, share it with your enemies because those guys are probably pretty cool.
Yeah. That's a better way to spin it. You're much better at marketing than I am now. Much, much
Jason,
better.
where can people reach you?
People can reach me at King of Black Acid on Twitter. Also at World's Second Finest on Twitter. That's World's the number two ND Finest. You can find us there posting and retweeting and not so much me on the personal account, but you get the gist. You can
Yeah.
contact. You know
You can
where
find
I
me at Nick Phil in most places. You can find all of my links to everywhere, YouTube, Discord, whatever, on linktree.com/NickPhil. I feel like we're sitting here
am.
staring at each other.
Oh yeah,
Thanks for listening. We're gonna close
uh,
it out. I thought you were gonna
yeah.
say thanks for listening.
Oh yeah. I was waiting for you. Oh
All
man,
right, all right. Let's put this shit show behind us. Uh